Hello. We are in the middle of the most somber period in the Jewish calendar, the 3 weeks from the fast of Tammuz to Tisha B'Av. The fast of Tammuz commemorates the breach of the walls of Jerusalem, and Tisha B'Av commemorates the destruction of the temple and many other calamities in Jewish history. It is a period of mourning. All forms of rejoicing are prohibited, including weddings. Today, I want to talk to you about the light at the end of this dark tunnel. This is prompted by this week's Torah portion, Mizrahi. It includes the story of the 5 unmarried daughters of Tzelaf'chad. Their father died, and they had no brothers to inherit the land. So, they went to Moses and asked him to be allowed to inherit it. Moses was about to say, "Sure, no problem, I'm an egalitarian at heart." But the leaders of the daughters' tribe, Menashe, argued that if the daughters wanted to inherit, they had to marry within their tribe, because the leaders did not want the lands to end up in the tribes of the husbands. Moses consulted with God, and God decided the daughters would both inherit the lands and marry within their tribe. Note carefully the language in the Torah. Quote, "This is the word that the Lord has commanded regarding Tzelaf'chad's daughters. Let them marry whomever they please, but they shall marry only to the family of their father's tribe." Thus, the inheritance of the children of Israel will not be transferred from tribe to tribe, for each person from the children of Israel will remain attached to the inheritance of his father's tribe. Every daughter from the tribes of the children of Israel who inherits property shall marry a member of her father's tribe, so each one of the children of Israel shall inherit the property of his forefathers. And no inheritance will be transferred from one tribe to another tribe, for each person of the tribes of the children of Israel shall remain attached to his own inheritance. As the Lord had commanded Moses, so did Tzelaf'chad's daughters do. Mahla, Tirza, Hogla, Milcah, and Noah married their cousins. Unquote. Now, note that intermarriage among the tribes was always allowed. The restriction applied only to marriageable women who owned lands. But even though the words seem very clear, the people were not happy with that restriction. So within a generation, the law was annulled. How can you do that? With the power of free interpretation. The leaders decreed, as explained in the Talmud, that the law applied only to Tzelaf'chad's daughters. Why? Because it is prefaced with the words, "This is the word that the Lord has commanded regarding Tzelaf'chad's daughters." But wait, later it says, "Every daughter from the tribes of the children of Israel who inherits property shall marry a member of her father's tribe." Okay, they said, but it means that the law applies to that generation only. The Talmud gushed about that decision in superlative terms. The Mishnah says, quote, "Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, there never was in Israel greater holidays, Yamim Tovim, than Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur." Unquote. The Gemara comments, "I can understand Yom Kippur because it is a day of forgiveness and pardon, and on it the second tablets of the law were given. But what happened on Tu B'Av?" Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, "It is the day on which permission was granted to the tribes of Israel to intermarry without restriction." This is how the tradition of Tu B'Av was born, the greatest day of joy in the Jewish calendar. It is a Jewish Valentine Day, an extremely popular day for weddings, coming as it does after the 3-week mourning period. My oldest son was married on Tu B'Av. It is the day for finding your bashet, your predestined soulmate. Let us continue to read the Mishnah in Ta'anit. Quote, "Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, there never were in Israel greater holidays than Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. On these days, the daughters of Jerusalem used to walk out in white garments, which they borrowed in order not to put to shame anyone who had none. The daughters of Jerusalem came out and danced in the vineyards, exclaiming at the same time, 'Young man, lift up your eyes and see what you choose for yourself. Do not set your eyes on beauty, but set your eyes on good family. As it says in Proverbs, Grace is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but the woman who fears God, she shall be praised." Unquote. Tu B'Av was particularly popular during the Second Temple period. It marked the beginning of the grape harvests. According to the book of Nehemiah, it also celebrated the wood offering brought in the temple. The rabbis officially added Tu B'Av to the modern Jewish calendar. The only religious observance is the omission of the Hanun, a penitentiary prayer recited after morning and afternoon services. Since it is a joyous day, we dispense with penitentiary prayers. It is a regular work day. If a funeral must take place, eulogies are not read aloud. The holiday has been rejuvenated since the founding of the State of Israel. In Israel, it is the custom, whether you're religious or not, to go to music and dance festivals and send cards and flowers to your significant other. Girls from Shiloh, north of Jerusalem, dance today in the same vineyards mentioned in the Mishnah, while Hasidic musicians play in the backgrounds. Also, Tu B'Av comes at a time of year when the nights begin to grow longer after the summer solstice. Our sages said the night was created for study, so this is a time when we must study Torah even harder. You can guess from its name that it comes on a full moon. Jewish months are lunar. Tu B'Av means the 15th of Av, that is the middle of the month, and the middle of the month is when the moon is full. A perfect setting for kissing your better half. Just as the Talmud and later commentators associated many Jewish tragedies with Tisha B'Av, other than the fall of the First Temple, so they associated many happy occasions with Tu B'Av, other than unrestricted permission to marry into another tribe of Israel. For example, in chronological order from Tractate Ta'anit, quote, "On Tu B'Av, the tribe of Benjamin was allowed to intermarry with the other tribes. That privilege had been suspended after the incident of the concubine of Giv'ah, as related in the book of Judges. The reasoning was similar to the one I mentioned earlier and is related to in the same section of the Talmud. The book of Judges says, 'None of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin for a wife.' Rav said in the Talmud, the phrase 'none of us' was interpreted to refer to us only, but not to our children. On Tu B'Av, the last of the Israelites that had left Egypt died. This meant that their descendants could finally enter the Promised Land. They had not been allowed to do so as long as the generation of the Exodus was still alive. That generation was tainted by the golden calf, the sin of the spies, a slave mentality, and too much old think. At that point, the Talmud adds, God began to talk to the people again. On Tu B'Av, King Hosea of the northern kingdom finally allowed his people to freely make pilgrimages to Jerusalem in the southern kingdom after 2 centuries of restrictions. On Tu B'Av, the Romans allowed the victims of the massacre of Betar to be buried. Betar was the last stand of the Bar Kokhba revolt in the year 135. That's where Bar Kokhba himself died. The Talmud adds that the bodies had not decomposed, even though they had been exposed to the elements for over a year. On that Tu B'Av, a 4th blessing was added by Rabban Gamliel the elder to the Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, which we still recite today. Remember, the first 3 blessings are Birkat HaZan, the blessing for food, Birkat HaAretz, the blessing for the land, and Birkat Yerushalayim, the blessing for Jerusalem. These 3 are mandated by the Torah. The new one, the 4th, is Birkat HaTov VeHaMetiv, the blessing for God's goodness. It calls God HaMelech HaTov VeHaMetiv Lakol, the good king who bestows good to everybody. The Talmud explains, who is good because he prevented the bodies from decaying, who bestows good because we were allowed to bury them. This is an absolute must in the Jewish tradition. When new Jewish communities are formed throughout the world, their first priority is to consecrate a Jewish cemetery. Tu B'Av marked the end of the season for cutting wood for the main altar in the temple. That was because from that point on, the sun's rays become too weak to dry the wood fast enough. If it doesn't dry fast enough, it becomes infested with woodworms and becomes unfit for the altar. They celebrated by cutting an axe and called it the day of the breaking of the axe. They sure love to celebrate in those days. But when you ponder all the reasons I just gave you, it does not leap at you that Tu B'Av should be the most joyous day on the Jewish calendar, until you finally realize that what ties all these reasons together is Tu B'Av is when you're finally allowed to do things you were not allowed to do before. This, of course, is what a wedding is supposed to mark, and that may be the greatest joy of all. Tu B'Av, coming soon. May this Tu B'Av be a prelude to many more days of festivities and rejoicing, weddings and happy occasions for you, for us, and for all Israel, and let us say Amen. Shabbat Shalom.